friends. I'm so excited. All right.
Yeah, it's 7. We can let them in now.
Oh, do we have a song? Should I play a song?
Yeah, play a song and pull the slides.
Okay.
We are.
Yeah, just Carl's gonna sing. That's all.
Yes, Carl's gonna sing.
Go, Carl.
Like key and all this stuff. I'm gonna make all kinds of excuses here.
Can you hear?
Ainda acontece. Alma não tem cor, porque eu sou branco. Alma não tem cor, porque eu sou negro. Alma não tem cor, porque eu sou branco. Alma não tem cor.
Ready?
Porque eu sou negro. Branquinho, neguinho. Branco, negão.
Ready?
Branquinho,
Okay, should I do a 3, 2,
reflexo do presente.
1?
Reflete lá na frente. Vencendo o tempo, vencendo a morte. E o que aconteceu ainda acontece. Alma não tem cor, porque eu sou branco. Alma não tem cor.
Welcome, Carlos and Denise.
Welcome.
Tem cor.
Hello.
How are you all doing?
Sou negro.
LaJewel is here too.
Branco, negão.
Yes.
Branco, negão.
Well, Jewel.
Branco, negão. Branquinho, neguinho.
Welcome, LaJewel.
Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, we're great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm actually driving.
Hey. Keep your eyes on the road.
Oh, I am. I'm picking up dinner. So
Awesome.
What you having for dinner?
Oh, share around.
we're going to Jester's tonight and
Okay.
fajita tacos and what was the other thing? Roasted chicken or something like that
Oh
that my
my.
husband ordered.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Thanks for logging on in the car. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
absolutely. I didn't want to miss it. So, but I had to go pick up dinner.
I love it. That's how it is. Welcome to Tish.
Hey, Tish.
Hi, Carl. How are you?
Wonderful. How are you?
How's everybody?
Excellent.
Okay. Hi, Tish.
Hello, hello. I see. Oh, there's LaJewel in your car. In your roving theatrical Zoom-mobile.
You gotta throw the slide deck up, Sandhya.
Yeah, let me find it real quick. I had it up and then it just left. There it is. Okay, got it.
Come on in, and it's good to see all your faces, hear your voices. Some of you have access to the chat right now, and some of you might not, like with Joel getting dinner. If you do have access to the chat, I invite you to first find it and then put in answers to a couple questions as we settle in here tonight for our conversation. The first one is, if you could describe your day in weather terms, not necessarily what's going on outside, but more about what's going on inside, what happened today, what would you say? You can put it in the chat. I slept really poorly last night, and I've been trying to catch up today and feeling a little foggy. I think foggy is my weather today, but the sun's breaking through the clouds for me with y'all here. Denise says storms brewing.
Mhm.
Mm.
I'm in agreement with Denise.
Thanks, Jewel. Cloudy with a chance on meatballs. Carlos, what are you having for dinner?
Maybe some spaghetti.
What's that?
I said maybe some spaghetti or some pasta.
Maybe some spaghetti. That sounds like a very exciting day. Meatballs falling from the sky. Fish, weather changing every 5 minutes.
Yes, it is.
Liz and Carl or Sandia, anything you'd say?
Mm. I think mine has been very humid and foggy and lethargic, I guess. Like, yeah,
Thanks.
dragging.
I would love, thank you all. Liz or Carl, do you have anything on that note? Chance of rain, snow, and sunshine. It's all kinds of things for Liz. Thank you. I'd also love to hear what one question is that you're bringing tonight. What's one question that you're bringing to this session? You can put it in the chat or come off mute and say. Meanwhile, Carl is sharing a cloudy day in London town, foggy. There's a lot happening. I wish hot and sultry weather for everyone. Thank you, Tish.
Thank you. I'll take it. Does a beach come with that?
I hope so.
Excellent. Is there one question that you're bringing to this session, or why? What brings you here tonight? You could also say.
Okay, let's see here.
Tish, how can we defeat the evil and violence in our world today through nonviolent means? Denise, it seems like the antidote to the violent gun culture. That's why I'm here. Thanks. Carl, why have people chosen Kingian nonviolence over other forms of struggle and organizing? Thanks, Carl.
Mm.
Liz, how to persuade people that preventing violence is important? LaJewel, curiosity brings me to the chat. Was invited, but not sure what it's about. Thanks, LaJewel. I appreciate your curiosity. Good questions. So glad you're all here. I'd love to hear, I think we're starting to get into it. What is your current focus in social justice and community building work? I heard you can come off chat or come off mute too and share if you like.
I'll share for now. Education. Education, I think, is my main focus. Ending policing in schools, not only from the cops, but the policing culture of from adults to children. That's my focus. Empowering students, empowering youth. Yeah.
I was just talking, Zendia, to a lady who's serving as a community health worker, and she was recounting to me that in Aurora, she's working under the umbrella of DCFS, and she commented on how many teachers, administrators are reporting Black and brown children to DCFS, and she's like, it's such a a pipeline and a setup, right? It's this like this clear way for surveillance and for incarceration. I'll share since I'm running my mouth. I'm working on we're working on affordable housing, building out mental health solutions that are solutions for everybody, without, you know, as few barriers as possible, as well as workforce training, but not like what we're used to. So workforce development that includes proper wages, proper pathways and pipelines, proper you know, accessibility and all of that. So those are some of the things that I've just kind of like my lane, right?
Thanks, Carl. We're glad for you and your lane. I've got some more in the chat. Liz shares building equity and inclusion in all settings. I make it a little bigger so I can catch some of these ones. And building safety in our community. Denise says, let's see, which I know Denise to be active in our community. So yeah, I appreciated the let's see. Police accountability, Elgin Task Force on policing, mental health, gun violence. And thank you for bringing, I hear in Denise and maybe in Tish's too, but maybe in all of our hearts, we bring the shootings that have been taking up so much of the news and so much emotional bandwidth for so many of us as we are racked by this violence again. And Denise shares also women's reproductive health issues. Thank you. Tish?
I come from the angle that the one thing that we can offer everybody that is actually mandated to all is education, information. I work at the Gale Borden Public Library. I'm the community engagement manager there. And I'm not necessarily representing the library tonight. They probably don't know I'm here. But my identity is librarian and sharing information and education. And that's why I'm here tonight. And
Hi.
we
Was it
cannot
female?
I'm sorry, somebody else was talking.
You're good. Thanks.
Okay. So when we're faced with this senseless violence, and our country has such a huge problem with guns, and every other country in the world just looks at us, why do we persist? I mean, we need to educate people. It's not just, okay, so if you want your Second Amendment rights to stand, does that mean assault weapons that can take out, 30 people in 10 minutes? Where is the education piece here? I am not a big fan of hunting, but I'm practical enough that maybe we need to let that stand. Go hunting if you wish. Keep your hunting rifle, which is not an AR-15 or a Kalashnikov or an AK-47, put it in a locker. Don't let anybody else touch it. People take more care of their bowling balls than they do of their guns. They don't let their kids touch their bowling balls. And yet, apparently everybody can get a hold of a gun.
Thank you, Tish. Thank you. I join you in what I'm hearing, a lot of anger and frustration, and
Yes.
join you in that. I join you there.
I'm sure all of us, feel the same way.
Absolutely. And I thank you for your work as a librarian. I think librarians can really bring a lot of social good and have a history of doing so, including you specifically, Tish. So thank you for being here tonight.
Well, librarians are actually loud. Everybody thinks we're quiet.
Thanks, Tish. Add to that. We do a lot of shaking it up here when Cynthia and I are running a training, so I'm shaking that up. LaJoel, you've been waiting to get into. What's your focus? What would you share?
Yeah, it's loaded. I was sharing this with Officer Schussler at our last meeting that basically I am in fear at this point of what America is really doing. I guess you want to say with Black people, you know, and you know, it's very hard to understand when I think, no, when I know that Black people are wanting the same things that everybody else wants. There's no difference. And I don't understand, you know, from the Black politicians to the white politicians, why that is not being said completely that way. You know, it's either addressing, you know, we want voters' rights, we want this. No, what it is we want to be accepted as Americans. And because we're not, things can happen like what happened last week. You know, those women that were shot, mainly women that were shot, I know it was some men that were in there, but those were matriarchs in the Black family. I'm a matriarch in my family. You know, my mother and my grandmother's passed. So when you take us out like that, you're losing or causing our families to basically lose, you know, quite big. High. So, you know, it's very hard for me to understand that it seems like America's okay with that. You know, I understand the issue, and I would never think anything or say anything, you know, in regards to children, most definitely. But, you know, we also have to understand that those older people are going to be lost in their families, more or less missed. And it just drives me nuts. There's no legislation put forth. They want to say that this guy is crazy, and that's what they're pushing for right now, that he was crazy. No, it wasn't. It was straight out racism. That's what it was. I took my daughter and my grandbaby last week to Urban Air. And I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm scared of white folks right now. I'm sitting in a building. I'm the only Black woman there. And I'm sitting here and I'm watching everybody. I have never, ever in my 56 years of life ever felt that way. I have never felt that way. And that's the way, and I'm feeling nobody cares. Nobody cares. And then I'm looking at the media, and our media plays us against each other. So now it's totally hurry up and get off of them. And now we're focused on, thank you. We're focused on this particular story. And it just, you have to understand, because if I was their family, I can only imagine that they are probably going off right now. That it's like, our people, our families didn't matter. Are you kidding me right now? So I don't know how. And then, you know, we hear, thank you. We hear of as the gentleman mentioned, of the school situation. Well, that's where I came from. I worked in the schools, and that's why I left the schools. It's because of the fact of what I seen. And that's why I homeschool. You know.
Thank you, LaJoel. You're touching on a lot of topics that I hope you keep bringing up. And I really appreciate all your sharing here and making sure that the shooting in Buffalo does not get so quickly forgotten, and that the violence and specter of racism is not so quickly forgotten and moved on to in the national news. Certainly, we do not want to do that here tonight. Thank you for bringing all of the story that you have shared so far of your own experience and where you're at. I appreciate and honor what you've
stated.
What's that?
No, I said thank you. I appreciate it, because I don't think that, you know, America gets to hear from real Black folks. You know, of how we're really feeling right now. You know, it's to even say that it's hurtful, it's beyond hurtful. This is causing, you're talking about traumatic right now. The majority of Black people that I'm talking to right now are traumatized at this point because they don't know how to be in America at this point. That we don't know what America wants from us.
Thank
you know,
Yes.
that's proof of it. We don't know what they want.
Thank you, LaJewel. I appreciate your sharing. And I want to invite you to bring that, and all of us to bring all we have shared so far, all the work that we're doing. Tish, I see your hand. I'm gonna ask if we can move on, and hopefully your question or comment will find some space later. Thank you. I'm so grateful. We took a little more time than we were planning to share some of those things, and I'm so glad that we did. I think it's important for all of us to really hear each other and to arrive in this space with how we really are and what we're really bringing, and just appreciate the powerful sharing we're already doing. I invite you to bring all that to this discussion on Kingian Nonviolence tonight, and to take what you will for the work that you're doing, for the passion that you have to make a difference in the world. So Sandia has a few notes for us as we settle in.
How do you transition from such heavy traumatic experiences to asking you to share your pronouns? So if you would be so kind as to share your pronouns in your next to your name. So if you hover over your image on the left, on the right hand side of the screen, there's 3 dots there, and the drop down menu, when you click on it, on your picture, and you should be able to rename yourself. You can add your pronouns and your location. We ask that we are here with intention, and we ask that we are present. So please remove distractions as best as you can. Get a beverage or anything that you might need. Get comfortable, get ready. If you'd like to get a note-taking tools, that would be a good idea maybe. And center yourself. And we have Carl King with us to let us know a little bit about King County United.
Hey, everybody. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you for your, wow, we've already had a lot of, heartfelt sharing, open-hearted dialogue. And that's kind of why we do some of this stuff, is because I think to engage with the world, we have to bring ourselves, we have to bring our anger, and not just our anger, but also the things that we're hoping for. So we bring our hope, we bring our joy, and we bring all of that into whatever work we're doing. As King County United, we are I guess you would call it a group of member institutions that we work together to tackle big stuff, to work to make societal change. And the innovation field is called social innovation. That basically means taking things that ordinarily wouldn't happen, situations, systems, and obstacles, and through the collective of many member institutions that are kind of had their head down doing their work, we lift our heads up, we work together to build something better together. And so we're doing quite a bit of work around affordable housing right now. Thank you, Liz, for sharing the website. But King County United, I won't say a whole lot. If you can just click to the next slide, who we are and what we are, and then we'll give it back to Pastor Katie and Sandra. So we are a little d. Our values are democratic, and we are based in racial equity and inclusion. And that's very important to us, that the work that we're doing is not colorblind, right? Is not devoid of the context in which the systems have been created, if that makes sense. We're a nonpartisan organization of community nonprofits, churches, unions, individuals committed to social transformation through solutions that use inclusive, proven models for improvement. So we're not out here like recreating the wheel. We're not out here just being, wild mavericks. We're looking around the country, around the world, and saying, okay, what has been done to fix problems? And how can we then bind together to address the problems that are very present and do exist in our world? So what we're doing is a speaker series for this year, and we have a number of different organizations and presenters that are presenting ideas and topics that probably you wouldn't hear anywhere else in Kane County, except within their organization and within whatever the work they're doing. And so because we are a collective, my goal and our goal as a board and as an organization is to expose our members to new ideas, new ways to organize. The organization I was previously a part of, they said, this is the only way to organize. You've got to do it this way. If you don't do it this way, then you're not doing it. And I just don't believe that, right? There are so many different ways. There's so many different tacks and tactics, right, to organize, to build solidarity, and to make change. And so, Pastor Katie, and I hope it's okay to refer to you as that, or just Katie, and Sandra, I've known them for a few years now, and I've watched how they how they operate in the world. I've watched their gracious kindness. I've watched the heart that they lead with and the way that they care. And they kept telling me about Kingian Nonviolence, right? Just about every month, they'd be like, hey, so we're having this Kingian Nonviolence thing. You need to come to this thing. And I was like, man, I always wanted to go. There was always something happening. And so when we were envisioning the speaker series, it's like, man, we've got to get them in to talk about how they use this as a tool for organizing. And so with that, I'm going to leave it to them. I'm not going to read their bios and make it all formal. Clearly, they don't want it formal if you look at that slide. All right, y'all take it away. Thank you so much for being here. And if we can just give them a hand clap real quick.
Thank you, Carl.
Woohoo!
You can also set up savings goals and easily track your progress.
Well, thank you, Carl. We're so excited to share with you all tonight. This is such a lovely group of folks. Some I know and some I don't know. I am a local pastor here in Elgin. I'm a 4-season bike commuter. I've got a couple kids. My social justice areas of focus have been police reform, and now I would say I'm more of a reimagining community safety person. I've also worked with the organization Carl did also on a campaign for affordable housing that was successful here, the 1212 Larkin Project, as part of a larger group of organizers that did not use Kingian Nonviolence, but I learned a lot from as well. And those are some of my areas of focus. And Sandia and I also work together with Elgin Community Bikes. We're both on the board, and we love to have a good time. What would you say, Sandra?
Yes, I wear a lot of hats in the community, and one that I just took off was working for public schools, public education, because Kingian Nonviolence has been essential in my understanding of non-physical forms of violence, which we'll jump right into. I'm an abolitionist educator. I prefer teaching in the streets. I like little fires and plants. And I'm a teacher. I'm a community organizer. I help with Elgin in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, and I'm help with the Human Relations Commission for the City of Elgin, Elgin Community Bikes, and among other things. But let's jump right in. Here's the agenda. We unfortunately have a limited amount of minutes together. So we're going to do the best to give you, to wet your toes into what the Kingian Nonviolence world is about. Here's the agenda. Katie's going to lead us into what is Kingian Nonviolence, what is violence, what's the difference between nonviolence with a hyphen and without a hyphen. That tiny little detail makes a lot of difference. levels of conflict and types of conflict, other topics in Kingian nonviolence, just to give you a little bit of a taste of what the rest of it looks like. And we're gonna have, I hope we have time for a Q&A, which is, I think, essential in this work. So, there we go.
And we'll welcome your questions at different points throughout our conversation tonight. Just in brief, Kingian nonviolence does stem from the US Black-led freedom movement of the last century. It also has roots that go as far back as the Gandhi-led freedom movement in India, and that continues still today with work that is active around the world. Kingian nonviolence is a methodology and approach and a philosophy and an approach to navigating conflict and also community organizing. We do use the word Kingian, which includes the work and the thinking of Dr. Martin Luther King, but also includes other thinkers from that era and from that movement, including folks you see here, like Dorothy Cotton, Bayard Rustin, Jim Lawson, women, men, queer people from that time. All of their thinking is part of this methodology that we share with you tonight. We also, in Kingian nonviolence, seek to bring back out, you see, I love to use this picture of King in the mugshot because I think his work is often sanitized. And at the time, of course, of his assassination, King was a rather controversial person who was willing to wage conflict nonviolently for the sake of social justice and building a better world, especially for Black people. And this was codified, Sandia, next slide, by these two lovely men who were young in the 60s when they were working with these folks, Doc Lafayette and David Jensen, into some of the topics that we'll present tonight.
Okay, I'm muted. I caught myself. Thanks. In light of this time and space that we've created today to share with you in conversation about violence and nonviolence and healing resistance, we'd like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that we conduct our daily lives on stolen Indigenous land. This was the land of the Council of the Three Fires, the Odawa, the Ojibwe, and the Potawatomi. Among others that might not be officially recognized by the United States government, the Chicagoland area served as a hub for trading and healing. And this is where we are going to prepare to speak up and to think about violence. So in the next 6 minutes, I'm going to invite you to think about what are some ways that you see violence being physical violence, and oh, here it is. Physical violence and non-physical violence. And you can come off mute and pitch the ideas, and I will write them down as you are speaking. So this is a collective effort where we are asking you to participate.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Of what I'm hearing, I'm extremely confused. And I guess where I'm confused at is, especially from all the points that you're speaking on, has been, of course, the history of Black people in this country trying to work along with others here in the country, right, for their freedom and to be accepted in the community, in this United States as a whole, right? Mm. And what I guess I'm not understanding at this particular point is I'm trying to understand, because I heard what the gentleman said, and I hate to keep saying his name, gentleman. I just can't recall it, but of what he stated in what you all's group is, what is it? you don't look at color, and that type of thing. And I guess I'm trying to understand in regards to what you all are doing, because we're in a total different place now, in a total different space in regards to African Americans and the way we're seeing things now, of those who actually are living in the Black skin of, within society. We're not seeing it that way. So I'm trying to understand, because, and also knowing that we're not the ones that are going out there being combative or going out and shooting people like that. So I guess it seems to be we're always told to pipe down or keep down or whatever, and that we're not even there. That's not what we're doing, but we are tight. We are.
Julie, can I speak to your question?
Sure, go ahead.
I think are you referring to me as the gentleman or whatever?
Yes. I'm sorry.
My name is Carl. It's fine.
Carl.
But I will say that I don't know that anybody has said we don't see color. I think our organization, Kane County United, we're very aware specifically of, and I said this, we're very aware of the reasons why these systems and these barriers exist. So we are we approach everything with a lens on color, on race, on diversity and inclusion. That is the reason we exist. One of the reasons and the ways through which we do our work. And so Sandra and Katie are here to present on Kingian Nonviolence, which is also very aware of color. So I don't know where you got that idea from or that concept, but no one here presenting
colorblind.
No, and I think there may have been some other things that you were doing in the background, but I said we do not approach things from a colorblind perspective.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so yeah, we could have, so, and I think when Sandra said, if we can just kind of eliminate all the distractions or whatever, I think that was one of those reasons, because we're covering some pretty heavy topics, and being able to understand what is being said is very crucial at this point. So I'll pipe back and turn this over to Katie.
Well, I just want to say thank you both thank you, LaJewel, for raising your concerns and questions. What we want to talk about tonight is how waging conflict nonviolently can help us come to better understanding together and to move forward together. And I really appreciate your wanting to get that straight, because I certainly do not want to be pushing color blindness. And I definitely want to be based in racial equity as much as I can. For me, growing up as a white person in the United States, I have a lot of racism I need to unlearn. And part of my journey to unlearning that and trying to become an act as an ally has been Kingian Nonviolence, and sharing with people how these tools can be helpful in the places and the areas of justice where each person is going to plug in. So I really appreciate, LaJewel, you're wanting to correct that, because I think that's really.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to figure out, because I keep hearing people keep saying to Black people, about not being violent, but everyone's being violent towards us. We're not, but we keep being taught this. So I'm kind of confused, and because I don't want to be I'm not trying to take up you guys' time or anything like that. It's unfortunate I didn't get the information, quick or sooner to understand what you guys were doing. And I don't even know if I would have, but with this, I'm going to say this, that I think maybe it would be better for me to meet with you all at a different time and to talk with you all, because at this point, I'm just going to say, I, don't think this is a good conversation for me to participate in, because I don't, if we're not the ones that are being violent, then I'm kind of tired of people preaching that to us, and not saying that I would be, but I'm saying don't come to me in that way. So I'm just saying.
Can I read a quote from Nonviolence before you leave? Because I think it's important. I'm just going to skip the slides for now, but the idea that nonviolence is about not being violent is one of the most common and dangerous misunderstandings that exists.
But at this point where we're at, they killed Malcolm, they killed Martin, who was definitely nonviolent, right? And they continue to kill leaders from our community, right?
Mhm.
So to keep telling us, Black people, to not do that, that is totally wrong. That is totally wrong, especially considering the fact that we never have. We never looked to come together to do that. We instead tried on every level, policy, you name it, speaking with the persons who make policy and, the governors, the president himself, who stated that he would take care of Black people once he got in. That's not what's happening. We tend to always continue to be put down at the bottom, and all reasoning and whatever. We have to reason. We have to understand. No, we don't. No, we don't. At this point in time, we're tired. And when a group of 11 Black persons can be killed in this particular time, I believe it was 9 in the other, enough is enough. Enough is enough. And so that's where I'm saying, I don't want to hear any more of we're doing what we're in the conversations, but we're still not being respected. So, I don't know what else can actually be said, but to come to us and tell us, don't think violence, it's like, we're not thinking violence. So why would that break to us?
Thank you, Joel. I really appreciate that. I
Okay.
agree. And if you need to leave, I understand. I think what we want to do is give the tools to address this horrific violence, and also, share the wisdom that like you're bringing right now for how that can be done. So thank you. I really appreciate that. And I also can understand why even the word nonviolence right now sounds offensive to your ears. And I definitely appreciate your sharing that.
All Black people's ears right now, believe me, the majority, I'll say that, the majority, they don't want to hear that right now. So, but I will digress. And thank you again for the invite of the person that reached out. And we'll maybe do this again, and maybe I'll be able to actually meet with you all in person. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, LaJewel.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That is a really excellent. I'm sorry that LaJewel can't continue to join us, but I'm so glad that she shared, because I think that is truth. And it's where so many of us are coming from. And whenever I talk about nonviolence, a lot of that, like, what do you mean? And I think that's one of the things that we want to talk about today is what are we even talking about when we talk about violence and nonviolence? And so for those of you, if you'd like to hear more, we'd love to just continue with starting, and I'll share the screens if you like, Sandra, about even what violence is in this way of understanding community organizing and approaches to conflict. Yeah. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah, that what just happened was a great wake-up call for the community to create spaces for dialogue before we even begin to talk about nonviolence. So maybe that would be a call to action for us to do that. And for maybe King County United to do that, to help us support in doing that. But meanwhile, we want to invite you to talk, or to tell us to think about ways that you see physical violence in your day-to-day, ways that you see non-physical violence in your life, in the nation, at home, from the microcosm to the macro, from the micro to the macro. So anything that, when you think of physical violence, what do you think of? When you think of non-physical violence, what comes to your mind? And we're going to try to come up with a 4-word definition for what violence is.
So
4 words.
I'll jump in. So for me, right now, in this moment of time, I think of violence as the images of those children and the adults who were gunned down and shattered by the yesterday and 10 days ago in Buffalo. That's what I see. That's the image.
Thank you, Denise. Others, if you just want to come off and put in the chat, I'll type them in for you.
Domestic violence.
Ooh, would that go under physical or non-physical?
I think it's physical violence. Typically,
Do you think it could be in both?
It's
I
both.
think, yeah, it definitely could be verbal. Yeah,
Could you give it a different name for the non-physical domestic violence section?
verbal abuse.
Verbal
It's
abuse.
abuse.
Verbal and emotional abuse.
Abuse and assault can be physical and non-physical. Violence, I would say for the most part, is physical, but violence is anything that violates. You're beating somebody else up. You want to annihilate them. You want to put them down. There's verbal violence. There's violence of emotion. It's that heightened desire to just do away with somebody. Domestic violence can be both physical and verbal, emotional, mental. I think when maybe somebody goes to the community crisis center and they're talking about domestic violence, they are probably thinking about the point when things become physical, but they certainly take in anybody who's suffering from emotional abuse. I'm actually a survivor of emotional abuse in marriage. I walked onto my husband over 20 years ago. Would I describe my experience as being violent? No, because it didn't get to the point that it was physical, but it was very horrifyingly emotional and mental for sure. But that's just my definition. Again, violence is anything that violates. And it can be random, it can be targeted, and it can be widespread, it can be directed to just one person. It's the absence of love. I don't know, it's the absence of respect. I don't know if there's, necessarily a definition. I would say if anybody comes forward and says, I've experienced violence, take their word for it, whatever that definition is.
I think all of these are very good descriptions of what violence can be or is in our eyes. But I see the common thread is something that violates something, the absence of love. So the definition that Kingian Nonviolence uses for violence in the next slide is physical or emotional harm. Obviously, physical harm is more visible. So we're going to talk about in the next slide, if anyone can come off mute, if we haven't heard your voice, would you be so kind to read this quote from Kasu Haga's book, Healing Resistance?
I'll read it. What is violence? Sometimes it's the words that we don't say or the actions that we don't take that can be a form of violence. Silence, isolation, neglect, abandonment, ignoring someone, not coming to someone's aid when they need help, or withholding resources from someone in need can also be as hurtful as getting beaten with a stick. So violence is clearly not just the use of physical force, and we need to include non-physical forms of harm in our understanding of violence.
Thank you. Does that resonate with what you were thinking when we were describing the physical and non-physical forms of violence? Does this give more visibility to the non-physical forms of violence? Does it balance it out? I see some nodding. So let's play a little game. We have a slide here with piglets, and the game, we
Want
have,
the piglets? I can get to the piglets.
yeah, the game is about finding, it's a little silly, but please play with us. Find the differences. I think there are 7 differences between these 2 images with the piglets. Can you find them? And feel free to come off mute and just shout them out.
There's 3 apples in one slide and 2 apples in the other.
Mhm.
Is that a broken window?
Yeah, with something on the window, yeah. Broken window, apples.
Okay, there's,
Purple flower in the second one, not in the first.
Purple flower.
the piglet's tongue is out in the second one and not in the first.
The tongue out, yeah.
And the
I would
eye
say-
is,
One pig has a tail and the other one doesn't.
Yeah, the tail. And that might be it. The clouds are there, yeah. Did we get them all right?
Suspenders color.
Oh, yes, the suspenders color is something else. So the differences, some of them are obvious, some of them are not. So can you tell the difference now between non-hyphen violence and non-violence without a hyphen? And it's
I cannot.
look really hard. Oop. Katie's just giving you the hint. She's like, he might be running out of time.
There's a hyphen.
Yeah, there's a hyphen. There's a hyphen, which makes it not violent. So we're not advocating to not be violent. We're not advocating to not take action in a peaceful way. Nonviolence is about peaceful resistance. It's about what are you going to do to stop the violence, which might include physical forms of stopping whatever it is that is harming others. And I think I read to LaJewel this quote that's here. The idea that nonviolence is about not being violent is one of the most common and dangerous misunderstandings that exist. Would anyone mind coming off of mute and reading the quote in white, in the white text?
I'd be happy to read it. Sorry, there's a dog in the background. Nonviolence is not about what not to do. It is about what you are going to do about the violence and injustice we see in our own hearts, our homes, our neighborhoods, and society at large.
Yes, yes. And I wish LaJewel was here to hear this. I'm glad she wants to meet up. But yes, this is why it's dangerous in thinking that we're not asking people to be peaceful. We're asking people, this is a call to action. And this is a way of tools to taking action. So I'm gonna let Katie take it over. to talk about conflict.
Absolutely. Just, I'm just because, especially LaJewel made so many good points, which I think was such actually a helpful starting place, and putting us like right in the context that we're in. There are two understandings of peace, right? There's peace that sit down and shut up, and that's non-hyphen violence. And there's peace that's stand up and do something about it, and that's nonviolence without the hyphen. We can talk about that as negative peace, which is a quietude, or true peace, which is everybody getting what they want and need, everybody getting what they want and having peace with justice. And so I think, what LaJewel had to say is right on, and what these great quotes that Sandy is pulling out of the book by Kazuhaga called Healing Resistance are so important. And Kazu is one of our mentors in this work. And you can hear more about his book in a little bit. So there's a little bit more about what violence is in a Kingian nonviolence understanding: physical or emotional harm. Nonviolence is not doing nothing. If you're not interrupting the violence, that's not being violent, or maybe sometimes it is when you're doing nothing. Being actually nonviolent means actually doing something to interrupt the violence that's happening all around us. So to continue on in that, just to continue giving you a little taste tonight of the tools in this tool belt of Kingian nonviolence, I'd like to ask you what comes to mind when you hear the word conflict.
I think of disagreements, opposing viewpoints.
Thanks, Carlos. Yeah, any others? Yes, absolutely. Conflict in Kingian nonviolence includes disagreements. It includes disagreements that end up in physical or emotional forms of harm and violence. And however, conflict in itself is not necessarily good or bad. Conflict in the viewpoint of Kingian nonviolence is actually neutral. It's how we use it that leads to violence or leads to greater good, to getting everyone the true peace with justice that we seek and need. And also in Kingian nonviolence, we believe that conflict always has a history. And, we've each named some of the areas that are important to us that we're working on. And I bet you can think now, or you can think about some of the things LaJewel shared or the things you've heard here, how the conflicts, certain conflicts have histories that are centuries deep, millennia deep, that have all kinds of pieces to them that need to be taken into account when we think about how to use conflict as a tool that can help us to bring about that true peace that we're looking for. Conflict is not necessarily bad or good, it's neutral, and it can be a tool in our understanding. When we think about conflict in Kingian nonviolence, we also talk about it having 3 different levels: normal, pervasive, and overt. And the reason this can be helpful is if you find yourself in a conflict, and you can think about this on an individual interpersonal level, and you can think about this on a broader level in communities, countries, a globe, and apply them in all those different places. I invite you to do that as we talk. These 3 different levels, if you think about what level you're at in these different conflicts, it can be helpful to think about what I like to call the medicine to apply to that area. So the first is normal, and in Kingian nonviolence, conflict is neutral and it is naturally occurring. It is normal. It will be with us always. And the medicine to apply there is prevention. When I was first studying Kingian nonviolence, the way that this most was brought home to me was my kids being teeny tiny, and we would go into Ziegler's Ace Hardware here on the East Side, Elginites, and they would, that was the worst place. They would just run amok. They would be like, in this aisle and that aisle, and I don't know where they are, and they're making people mad and knocking things over. And it would just make me crazy. Like, I don't know, try all different things, like screaming at them. So I decided that if this is a naturally occurring thing, conflict, what is the conflict that is happening here? Maybe we have different expectations about how we behave in the hardware store. And so I said to my children, what are our expectations? What are our agreements when we enter this space? And they actually were the ones who said, probably no running. Yeah, that would be great. And do you think it makes me comfortable when I can't see you? No. And so that's, just interpersonal in my family, but there are plenty of ways, and you can see here other ones that can be interpersonal. Where do you put the toilet paper? Probably if you live with other people, that's a thing. Or how do you do the toothpaste? But also, if we might not get to types, Sandhya, but if we were to get to types when you have a distributive conflict, say you only have so much of something, in our transit justice work, how do we share the road with cars, with people who are walking, with people who need public transportation, with people on bicycles? How do we share the road? How do we share the infrastructure dollars? Well, how can we prevent actual physical conflicts from happening right out there and people being killed? Guns now have overtaken cars as the biggest killer of children in the United States, but it's guns and cars for the violence that happens out there. So what can we do to prevent these things? Pervasive violence is the next level, and this level. This is when many of us can feel this in our bodies, when like the room is getting tense. And there are people who are no longer talking to each other. They are talking about each other somewhere else. If there is a monologue going on, then you are in the pervasive level. And the medicine to apply here is dialogue. How can we get to a place where we can actually sit down and talk to each other about what's going on? And there are more topics to talk about in Kingian Nonviolence about how to do this well. We saw it being done. I thought it wasn't totally resolved, the conflict we had just now with some of the good points LaJewel was making, some of the points that Carl made. That was a conflict. There was some dialogue back and forth. The conflict wasn't necessarily resolved forever and for good, but there was some good dialogue that happened there. And I think some more understanding that was shared. So that's maybe an example of a taste of that. But also we're going to think about this on our broad, some of us said we're thinking about policing work, we're thinking about affordable housing. How can we get people to the table and to have that dialogue with each other? What are some of the areas where you can see this would be helpful, or what kind of pervasive conflicts are in your life?
Do you need a hand with the slides?
That was just a little tricky in the fingers there. I'm all right. Any pervasive, have you ever had that feeling in your body? Does anyone want to speak to that? Like, some nods, the head. Yeah. Let me tell you about the third level, and maybe you can identify some areas where this might be helpful. The third level we're escalating is overt conflict. And this is where you see folks here engaging in physical violence. And also it can be forms of overt conflict that are non-physical. Can anyone give me some examples of those? Where violence is being done?
I think just yelling, like aggressive.
Shouting matches or
Absolutely.
Insults, derogatory words.
Would you put housing policies that deprive households of the security that they need in this category? Would you see that as a form of violence? I would certainly.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
How do we in the medicine for this overt level is management, is interrupting. It's stop splitting up these parties, these men who are fighting, the people who are yelling. It's splitting them up in order to de-escalate so that we can get back to pervasive and that dialogue medicine. Sometimes this is different timelines for different needs, but how do we practice nonviolence at this level to manage the situation? Kazu Haga, who we've talked about, who runs East Point Academy in Oakland, California, and works in prisons and with largely underinvested communities. He talks about this time where on his outside his window, he lives at a busy corner, and in the middle of the night, there was some yelling outside, and he was trying to sleep through it. And he finally got up and looked out the window, and there was a man beating a woman. And he put on his, whatever clothes and shoes and ran down outside into the crossing there. And he got in the middle of the fight and used some physical force to stop the man from beating the woman. And so that is a form of management. Going back to nonviolence versus non-violence, when he took a breath after that, he looked around and saw that his neighbors had come out to stand and watch while it happened. And he talked about how they were just standing there using non-violence. They weren't also beating up the woman, but they weren't doing jack about it. And so they were not being non-violent. They were not standing up and interrupting the violence that's happening. What are some of the areas that you want to know more about how to manage in your life, or ways you have interrupted violence?
Bystanders can contribute to violence, says Liz.
Thank you, Liz.
I think one thing that I've been it's been interesting over time. I used to, full disclosure, I used to go to I did it one time. I went to an abortion clinic, and I stood with a group of evangelical Christians, and I sang the concert, and they would like stand on the side and heckle or in some way oppose the women that were going to get an abortion. And that was violence, but I didn't realize it was violence at the time, right? And now when I'm seeing the I don't know, the heightening and the fruits of that is now politicians and even the Supreme Court is finding comfort in the fact that they can oppose abortion rights and reproductive rights. And then when people do the very same thing that has been done to women for decades, right? But in a more restrained way, just protesting outside of their house, not going in their house, not getting in their face, not screaming. That's seen as violence, and there's a bill passed almost that multiplies security. So I'm just interested to hear about those different forms of violence.
Absolutely. Me too. And we could talk, we said earlier, we got 75 minutes, but we're just going to stay up. We didn't tell you how long, so we're just going to be here all night. Thank you, Carl. That is a rich vein to mine. And we already brought up, I think it was Denise and maybe others, reproductive health as being an issue of focus and the violence that is going on there. And how can we interrupt it? I wish we had time tonight to talk about the 6 steps to a nonviolent campaign. In Kingian Nonviolence, direct action is one of those. steps, but there are so many other steps and so many other tools to make sure that we get to the negotiating table where we can seek the things that we need in this dialogue area, and to make the asks, to demand the things that we believe will make our communities more peaceful and more just and have a higher level of well-being. So we won't talk about those things tonight. But very quickly, here are, I would like to tell you about the types of conflict. And I'm going to have very limited amount of time, but I just want to tell you there's also a tool to think about the different types of conflict that you're in. You could be in a pathway conflict where you have the same goals, but you're getting there differently. You can probably think about this in any households or relationships that you've been in. It often happens. Boy, Sandra and I have spent plenty of time talking about the struggle within the struggle. Like, how do you get things done? And how do we all understand these things the same way? Not always. So that can be part of it. Here's a little picture. Mutually exclusive is we got different goals, but we're hanging out together. I read this, I'm like, because I'm a pastor, I'm like, this is church. People are coming to church for like all different reasons. Like, they just come to hang out. They're coming to like the coffee, they like the music. Maybe the one person is listening to the pastor's sermon. But they're all different reasons people choose to be part of really any group. Often, and they can have different goals and yet choose to function together. And I think sometimes the wheels come off when those goals go in different directions. So it's a good thing to think about. There's a little picture. And distributive conflict, I've already mentioned a little bit, but I think about how I love this. There's not enough resources for all, or the perception that there's not enough resources for all, because often it is the perception. We don't have money for whatever it is, maybe because we're already spending on something else, that if we shifted it around could be used differently, or for any reason. But I like to think about how I wake up in the morning and I'm in a distributive conflict with myself, because there is only so much time in the day and there are too many things that I want to get done. And so how do I sort through all of that, make priorities, and work together? So these are different conflicts that you certainly see. I could name places where distributive conflicts are at work in affordable housing, for certain, among other things that we have named here today. Oh, there's a pretty road. This goes back to the perception and the broken road. And a values conflict. Whoo, are we seeing this in the news? At least for me, when I look at the stalling of national legislation to curb gun violence, which I think could be really helpful, and I see that, I think, at least I say about being a church person, like, I want to be never partisan and always political. And I don't know if that rings true for even those of you who aren't church people, but unfortunately it breaks down on partisan lines often in these days, the different values that are at play. So when it comes to gun violence, we see, I saw that the Republican side, instead of in the Senate putting forth or adopting some of these gun violence measures, wanted to start a national database of safety protocols for schools. And you could probably think about that on a number of types of violence, or types of conflict rather, but I saw this one jump right out at me, that there are different values at play here, and probably different goals too, and certainly a wide gap in understanding, in my opinion. There's how you can see things differently. Some types. Other topics in Kingian Nonviolence we could cover include, I would love to talk to you about dialectical thinking and how we come to win-win solutions. I would love to talk to you about the principles of Kingian Nonviolence and say more about even what this is. Aggression conciliation, where we take our anger and aggression and level it at the conditions and not the human beings. And we make nice with the human beings and not the conditions. So we don't just say, we can't do anything about these bad things. and so we're just going to be violent toward the people. So that's a short version. There's so many things to talk about. I'm so glad that you invited us to come tonight. We are going to have to wrap it up. Here are some next step solutions. Sandia, what would you say about any of these?
If any of this resonated with you, this is how to get in contact with King County United. If you'd like more information or would like to book a 16-hour core training for Kingian Nonviolence, you can reach out to us. Here is Kazu Haga's book, Healing Resistance. If Gail Borton doesn't have it, please ask, fill out a request form for them to have it available.
Let me look it up. Sorry, it's healing. What was the title?
Healing Resistance.
Okay, let me check.
Yeah, I've never checked. Thank you, Tiz.
Thank you. Land acknowledgements also, and reading the letter from a Birmingham jail from Dr. Martin Luther King, and Pilgrimage to Nonviolence also is a good resource. This is a process. Kingian Nonviolence, the principle number one is Kingian Nonviolence is a way of life. It's difficult to compact it into 75 minutes, as we have seen. We have 1 minute left. So it really unfolds as you walk with it. And it's more beautiful when you have colleagues and friends that you love walking in the same path of nonviolence with you. There's a group of healing resistors here today. So thank you very much. If you have
And
any
we have
questions,
Healing Resistance as a downloadable audiobook.
Yes, the power of librarians, the
But
rescue.
anytime you want a title and we don't have it or not in the format that you need, please just let us know, because we can order it for you.
Fabulous.
So we just need to know you want it.
Thank you, Tish. You're the best. I never even thought to look. I appreciate that so much. You know what? We're gonna wrap it up. I can stay on a little longer if that's okay with the KCU folks. If you have other questions, you just want to wrap up, but I want to honor our time together here. You know, this guy named Carl King, he put on Facebook recently, like, we gotta have some beauty in our lives. And I appreciate that so much, because there is terrible violence and terrible suffering and terrible injustice, and also beauty and hope remain. And I want to hold those things with both hands. So I invite you to take in this beauty here. And I invite you just to take a deep breath. I invite you just to take a moment to think about your own journey of justice work. Maybe it includes, maybe you're allergic to the word nonviolence right now, or maybe it has included nonviolence, or maybe it will in the future. I invite you to give thanks for the journey of your life that you've been on, and the ways that you have been called into work, the ways that little acorns have grown into mighty oaks for you. I invite you to take a moment to notice where you are right now in your life as you respond to the suffering in the world and the beauty that remains, both. How are you feeling moved to act? And I invite you to think about how you might continue to grow, how your communities of which you are a part might continue to grow, healthy and strong, nonviolent, and the kind of peaceful that means peace with justice, where we all have what we need, where there is well-being and wholeness. Thank you for being here tonight. If you do want to hang on after, I can stay for a couple minutes, and maybe some other folks will too. And Sandhya has brought a song for us to close with.
These intense conversations call for a lullaby. This is called The Lady of the White Buffalo. It's soothing. Hamna, 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 hey yo. Hamna, hamna, hey yo. Hamna, 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 hey yo. Hamna, hey yo, hey ya. Hey, hey, hey ya. Hey ya, hey ya. Hamna, hey yo, hey ya.
Thank you all. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Carlos with us to the very end.